What's up guys, this video we're going to break down the 7 biggest threats that are ruining men's lives in 2023 so that these don't happen to you. Alright, so in this video we're going to break down the 7 biggest things that are ruining men's lives in 2023. So make sure you guys watch until the very end so that one of these doesn't happen to you. Let's start with the first one, which is the one that guys in the manosphere are most worried about, and that's false rape accusations, right? False charges, right? And again, this is something that definitely does happen. However, I feel like a lot of guys overblow it. You are as likely to be convicted of a false rape accusation as you are to be struck by lightning, right? The statistics on that are pretty clear. However, a charge in of itself without a conviction can still ruin your reputation, stuff like that. So there are definitely things that you can do to mitigate your risk. I would say that one of the biggest ones is after you have sex with a girl, send her a text that said, hey, I had fun, or that was fire, right? And then when she texts you back, that's going to be your insurance policy, right? So then a few months later, if she changes her mind and she goes to the police, you're like, hey, listen, she texted me, she said she really enjoyed riding my dick. Like, yeah, clearly this chick is making it up. The second thing that I would recommend you do is don't fuck with girls who are drunk, right? I personally would do that for ethical reasons anyway, but also, even if you don't have a conscience, in terms of just self-preservation, it's not a good idea because then the girl can change her mind and regret it later. And I would say that the last thing you can do is avoid girls who are bipolar or ratchet, right? I personally don't fuck with any ratchet girls, even if they're really attractive, because again, the false rape accusations, all that stuff, the upper middle class, girls typically don't do that. It's going to be more of your lower socioeconomic girls who really need a paycheck. And it's going to be girls who also carry themselves in a certain way. Just because a girl is poor, she comes from poverty, doesn't necessarily mean she's a higher risk. However, she's like really ratchet, hangs out with a bunch of other ratchet girls, she's into the OnlyFans type of life, right? When you combine all those things, maybe she just carries herself in a very type of kind of trouble-esque manner, right? You kind of look at her like, yeah, this chick is fucking trouble. Probably good to go with your conscience, go with your gut, and avoid the girl, right? So again, it's not worth to risk it just for, one more lay. It's just not worth jeopardizing your future. Again, don't be paranoid about this. Don't be, thinking, oh my God, every girl I hook up with is going to give me a false charge. I personally have never been accused, never had anything like that happen. Again, because it takes some common sense precautions. And like I said, the biggest one is shoot the girl a text right after sex, when she's most excited, when her emotions are at their highest, so that you get that text back, and that's your insurance policy. Number 2, now this was one that I think guys should worry about a lot more because it's way more likely to happen, and that's getting a random woman pregnant. We're not talking about women you're trying to have a kid with. We're talking about literally like a chick that you just have a one-night stand with, or girl you just start seeing, but you're not ready to settle down with, and you get her pregnant, right? So again, this happens to guys all the time, and this can ruin a man's life. Now, of course, maybe 20 years later, you're like, oh, this is the best thing that happened to me because I have a kid. But again, for a lot of guys, having an unwanted pregnancy is going to destroy your quality of life. So the best thing you can do is use birth control, right? Don't think with your dick. If the girl's like, yeah, don't worry, babe, I'm on birth control, fuck that. Still put on the condom, right? I am personally, unless I am in a serious relationship with a girl and I can trust her explicitly. If I wouldn't trust a girl with all my money, then I'm not going to trust her with my semen, right? So again, unless you really trust the girl, right? She's responsible. She doesn't fuck around. She has her own career, right? And you're in a serious relationship with her, don't fuck her raw. Especially even if you do, don't fucking come inside of her. That's just playing with fire, but not in a good way, but like in a bad way. So again, this is something that you can avoid just by simply wearing condoms, right? Play it safe. Don't be silly, wrap your willy. Number 3, wage slavery and lack of financial freedom. So yes, this is one that guys commonly don't talk about. However, this is typically what happens to men. They finish college, they're in $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 worth of student debt, sometimes $100,000, and they get a job. It's a 9 to 5. Maybe they're making $50,000, $60,000 a year. They get, they start living in a nice apartment, they get a car, right? And they're not putting any money away for savings, right? They're living paycheck to paycheck, and they have massive amounts of student loans, and they don't have the luxury of losing that job because then they're going to go into debt, right? So they have to hang on to a job that they don't like. They have to put up with their boss's shit, and at any time, if the company goes out of business, they will be unemployed through no fault of their own. That is something that personally happened to me when I was working for a solar company. Again, I was a great employee, did my job. I definitely, did my share of the contract, right? But, the people higher up, they made some mistakes. They couldn't raise money, and the company went bankrupt overnight, and everyone lost their money through no fault of my own. I never want to be at the mercy of someone else's mistakes. If I'm going to be broke, it's going to be because of the mistakes I make, not because of the mistakes that someone else makes, which is the advantage of having your own business. Now, I'm not saying everyone needs to have their own business, but everyone needs to have financial independence, right? You want to be at a point where you don't have to go into an office manually, so you have location independence, but also you're not reliant on your boss, you're not reliant on paycheck to paycheck, you have some investment, you have some savings, right? So you're able to actually live a life of financial freedom. Now, the biggest thing is that they say money doesn't buy happiness, and there's an element of truth there. However, money does buy freedom, and freedom does equal happiness. So, going from, let's just say having like $500,000 to having $10 million isn't necessarily going to make you happier, but going from living paycheck to paycheck to having $500,000 in the bank and being able to work on what you want when you want is going to make you happy. So again, don't think about it, money's going to make you happy. Think about, I just need to achieve financial independence. If I have financial independence, then I will be happy. And there's definitely truth. Number 4, loneliness and isolation. So men are becoming more and more isolated now than they've ever been. This is affecting women a lot less because women are generally much more social. So the vast majority of women still have a bunch of friends that they hang out with, right? But a lot of men don't. They have absolutely zero real life friends. They're in all these like parasocial relationships with all their random people online who they've never met in real life. And to some extent, I'm guilty of this myself. I have a bunch of people I'm friends with on the internet. However, I also balance it out by having a lot of really good friends in real life, like people who I actually meet up with, hang out with, right? And you can't replace that with anything else. So again, I would say that, having real friends is probably more important in some ways than being successful with women, because again, like you just cannot replace that type of companionship, that type of bonding that you get, right? So a lot of men are finding themselves isolated. Don't fall into this trap, right? Stay social. Force yourself to be social if necessary, and make sure you have at least several friends that in real life that you can talk to. And if that's not the case, then try to network and make those friends. So for example, you could take advantage of the fact that you're in the pickup community, right? A lot of my really good friends, in fact, the majority of my friends, I met through the pickup community, right? These were people that, when I moved to a new city, I was like, hey, let's go out and wing. We really got along well and became friends, right? So you can use the pickup community, whatever community you're involved in, whether that's the fitness community, snowboarding community, boat community, doesn't matter. You can use to your advantage to find other men who have similar interests as you, no homo, and become really good friends with them. So I think that's really, really important. And again, you don't want to become isolated because that's going to lead to an increase in mental health problems, which we're going to talk about later. Number 5, social media and internet addiction. A lot of men, and this goes back to my previous point of not having friends, are finding themselves addicted to the internet. And even worse, they're addicted to pornography and OnlyFans. I think OnlyFans is probably as bad as it gets. If you're addicted to OnlyFans, shit, man, you have a tough road ahead. Being addicted to porn is not as bad, and being addicted to the internet in general is not as bad, but they're all still kind of bad, right? And again, I have a little bit of a social media addiction myself, so I'm not perfect when it comes to this. I could definitely improve on this. However, fortunately, I have never paid for girls' OnlyFans, and I don't watch porn, right? Or at least not often, right? So once in a blue moon type of thing, if I had a girl over, that type of thing. So anyway, so that is something you want to avoid. It is a trap, right? And again, you're going to be reliant on those dopamine hits. And then when you're with a real life girl, you're not going to be able to get an erection because you're so used to these dopamine hits you're going to get from watching freaky Japanese tentacle porn on Pornhub, right? So you want to avoid being reliant on social media. Limit yourself. I have rules for myself. So if I'm hanging out with either my girlfriend or my friends, I put my phone down. Now, of course, sometimes I get texts, I pick it up. You don't have to be OCD about it. But if I'm hanging out with real life people, I put my phone down and I focus on the interaction we're having. And it's important to have that habit. I have times in the day where I will put my phone down and listen to an audiobook or meditate or something like that. That's much better than just constantly being on your phone. Don't be addicted to social media. I think TikTok in of itself is a cancer because it's literally the worst of the worst. It combines 20, 30 second short attention span videos with useless content, stuff like that. If you are going to be consuming a lot of content on the internet, which is okay in moderation, at least make it educational content or content that is going to in some ways benefit your life. Don't make it useless, like just fucking random people dancing and in weird situations like this. Pointless content that's not going to better your life in any way. Make it something that's at least educational, but even with that kind of stuff, make sure you limit it. Number 6, influence from the wrong people. I've said this many times in the past, and I will say it again. Thank God that when I was 2012, 2013, when I was learning about pickup and I was kind of, starting to expand in terms of my ability to get girls, when I was really looking into all this stuff, that there was no black pill community. At least if there was, I didn't know about it. Thank God I discovered the pickup community, which was largely positive, motivational, and allowed me to actually improve my life. However, around that time when I was at my most vulnerable, again, when I didn't really have any success with women, if I found the black pill community, it is entirely possible that right now, instead of making this video and being in a happy relationship and just having a fairly happy life, I would be a miserable, bitter, just incel, right? Just sitting around, just raging on the internet, just complaining how looks are the only things that matter. And this is not just limited to, the black pill community. There's a lot of communities out there that will take you down the wrong path. Same thing with politics. Politics, sure, it's interesting, it's entertaining. Everyone should probably do their civic duty. However, A lot of people would just spend all day arguing with people about politics, and it just becomes this weird rabbit hole that they go down to, and then they start believing in all these weird conspiracy theories, and literally they can't even have a normal conversation without arguing about politics, right? Again, you don't want to go down any of these rabbit holes, and there's a lot of rabbit holes that exist on the internet. Don't go down these rabbit holes, and don't surround yourself with people who are going to take you down the wrong direction. I personally, I will hang out with people who are very successful, or who are not that successful. I'll hang out with people who are good with girls, not good with girls. But one thing all my friends have in common, this is without a doubt, is they're all fairly positive, motivated individuals, right? I do not have any friends who are negative, complaining, whiny losers. Absolutely not, because that will infest your mind, and you don't want people like that in your life. And number 7, which I think is potentially the most serious one on this list, is mental health issues. So male suicide is on the rise. Men are committing suicide in record numbers. There's a lot of depression that's going on. A lot of men, having anxiety issues. And I've had some depression, anxiety, myself in the past, right? Something that I have struggled with as well, right? So mental health is something that is becoming worse and worse. Now, of course, I can get into all my theories for why I think men's mental health is at its worst that's ever been. I would say it's a combination of the fact that we eat really shitty food, the fact that we don't exercise as much, the fact that we don't really have as many friends anymore, the fact that we're spending all day on the internet. There's a lot of reasons why our mental health is getting worse and worse. However, we need to combat that by taking active measures, and that's things like going to the gym, right? They found in a study that working out is as effective when it comes to curing depression as SSRIs. So clearly, fucking working out, going to the gym works. Doing things like meditation, reading, hanging out with your friends, right? Being able to go out and get into flow states, right? Pursuing things that you want, having a purpose in your life, something that you're doing that is more than just sitting around just clicking on a screen, right? That is what's going to combat all the mental health issues that we're prone to have. In addition, I think there's a massive stigma when it comes to men getting help for the mental health issues, right? It's like, oh, you went to therapy, oh, you're less of a man. Pure fucking nonsense. There's absolutely nothing wrong with going to therapy. I personally did 2 years of therapy. It was quite helpful in terms of discovering my own issues. I encourage any man who has any kind of mental health issue is to ignore this weird stigma that exists and actually seek mental health. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't make you less of a man. In fact, I believe it makes you overall a more fulfilled human being once you're able to figure out your issues and solve them. Just make sure you're working with someone who has a problem-oriented, solution-oriented approach, right? They're not just talking about the problem. They're actually focused on getting you the solution. Again, there's a lot of things you can do. There's a lot of very interesting treatments that exist. There's a lot of supplements you can take. For example, one that I would recommend is ashwagandha. That's a really good one for balancing out your cortisol. I take a whole bunch of vitamins. I have a red laser that I just sit in for 20 minutes, which stimulates my mitochondria. I have an infrared sauna. I sit in that every night, which helps me detox. So there's a lot of things that I personally do to combat all the bad influences that exist. But that's not really the point of this video, is to get into the specifics. It's just to simply say you need to take your mental health seriously, because there's a lot of forces that are working against you. All right, hopefully you guys found this video valuable. And the last but most important step to actually avoiding all the pitfalls that come with being a man 2023 is subscribing to this channel and hitting the bell for notification, because I will continue to give you guys on here practical, no BS type of videos. It's going to help you improve your life and level up your success as a man. Also, make sure you guys check out our brand new PWF Clips channel. We're taking all the best highlights from debates, podcasts, internet arguments, and putting them on there. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time.